How long is the leash going to be for Conner Weigman, assuming he's even out there, against South Carolina on Saturday?
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So on the show today, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about why the bye week is coming at a really good time for this football team. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about some players that have got to show up for Texas A&M to win this game. But we're going to start the show talking a little bit about the leash that Conner Weigman's going to have at quarterback. Those that are annoyed by talking about quarterback, I'm sorry, but when you have a situation like this, it's just so important we have to discuss it. That's just the reality. There's nothing we can do here. We have to talk about this. And looking at the way this is going, I think that I still believe Conner Weigman's gonna go out there, and I no longer can defend that in my opinion. I think the way the coaching staff looks at it is we're going to put Conner Weigman out there because the upside with his arm is so great. And if he's bad, we're just going to put in Marcel Reed. And I think that's the plan. So the leash, I would say the leash for Conner Weigman is extremely short, like 2 drives. I mean, realistically, like if he gets the start and he goes out there and the Aggies do not move the football for 2 straight drives, do they go to Marcel Reed? I could see that happening. I think the way they look at this is Marcel Reed is, which once again, I don't. Now, one thing we've learned, one thing that I will not do here on this show is ever disagree with anything Mike Elko does. I am 100% all in, bought in on Mike Elko and what he's doing in every decision he could make. I am a little surprised by this one, but at the end of the day, I trust our head football coach to make these decisions because he has not proven us wrong to this point. But I also don't think they're going to go with this whole 2 quarterback thing. You saw Klein do that a little bit last year with Will Howard and Avery Johnson. But I just don't. I think you pick one and you roll with it. We did hear, Beamer's talking about having to prepare for 2 quarterbacks. That's a good thing. That is more on the plate of South Carolina as they prepare for this game. That is more they have to get ready for, which is great. You would rather a team have to spend time preparing for 2 quarterbacks. That's great. But I think that Coach Elko and this staff, they're going to look. I believe Conner Weigman's going to run out there first. And then one of 2 things is going to happen. We're going to see Missouri Conner Weigman, or we're going to see Mississippi State, LSU, Notre Dame Conner Weigman. And if we see Missouri Conner Weigman, he's going to play the whole game, and I think Texas A&M wins this game substantially. If we see the other 3 games of Weigman to make an appearance, I think you're going to quickly see the change made to Marcel Reed. Now, I'm just telling you, what Marcel Reed did against LSU, that worked so well because it was just such a sudden change. Boom. Okay, here's our running quarterback. Good luck figuring this out on the fly. LSU, that's a tough adjustment for a coach to make in game. They put them in a really tough spot, which is why the Aggies were able to win the game. I have a feeling that South Carolina will be a lot more prepared for the move from Weigman to Marcel Reed. So what this means to me is pretty simple. The Aggies need to make sure that they have some plays in the book for Marcel Reed to use his arm as well. I think that the whole, we're going to either run it with Reed or run it to Moss or Daniels, I think that can get pretty, it's never, nothing's easy to stop. Nothing is easy to stop, but I think that if you play it right, you can stop a running quarterback with some running backs. You can. So I think that knowing that they're going to be more prepared for Marcel Reed than LSU was, I think obviously Marcel Reed had 70 passing yards. That was on 2 attempts. He was 2-2. I think you've got to have a few more passing plays drawn up for Reed in this if he does end up getting in the game. Now, do they do the 2 quarterback thing? Will they maybe give Marcel Reed a drive here and there to see if he can spark something with his legs? I wouldn't be surprised to see that. I really wouldn't. At this point, I would not be totally shocked if they gave Marcel Reed a drive at some point. He's earned it. I'm not the biggest fan of the 2 quarterback system. It gets your guy out of rhythm. Especially, like, I would rather, if Conner Weigman's not playing well, just go to Marcel Reed. Don't switch back and forth. If Conner Weigman is playing well, I don't know if make the switch maybe in the red zone and see if, Reed can score, but it's a rhythm thing. I think it gets quarterbacks. I mean, we've seen this work in college football, and we've seen this not work in college football. And I'm just telling you, I think that it gets a quarterback out of rhythm. It gets a quarterback out of rhythm. It can be a confidence issue at times when you see someone else going in the game. I am not the biggest fan of that unless it's necessary. And there's some plays where if you want to put Marcel Reed in on 3rd and 1 to run some kind of play where he can either give it to Moss or take it himself, sure, okay. You got to do what you got to do to win the game. Obviously, if you feel that's what gives you the best chance to win the football game, then switch quarterbacks in and out here and there. I do think it creates rhythm issues. I do think it creates problems for your starter. But at the same time, I trust this staff to make the right decision for this team. I do. They've not given us a reason to not trust them yet. And looking at this, I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, the hope is that this isn't even an issue and Conner Weigman plays well. Do I have confidence that that's going to happen? I don't. No. After the last few weeks, I just don't have confidence that he's going to play well. I mean, since Conner Weigman plays well against Missouri, you have that bye week. He plays poor against Mississippi State and poor against LSU. I don't have a ton of confidence in him playing well. And I see a lot of people, as like somebody added me on Twitter saying something, well, you defend Weigman and all this. And I'm like, and no, I no longer have a defense for Weigman. The reason I think what's going to happen is I think this staff is going to stick with their guy. I'm not saying I necessarily agree, but I think that's what's going to happen. So the question now becomes, is Conner Weigman going to show up, or are you going to have to go to Marcel Reed? Because, to sum up this conversation, I don't think this leash is long. Like I said, I would say my guess is 2 drives. If he isn't good for 2 drives, I don't see them sticking with him. I think on a road game against a solid team, you have to find a way to score early and score often. And if you don't, it's going to get really hard to win this game, especially if they punch you in the mouth early and they put up some points early in this game. So I don't think the leash is long for Conner Weigman. I think the leash is incredibly, incredibly short. And if he doesn't find a way to early in this game make an impact, I think they're going to go to Marcel Reed. So while I still lean toward Weigman being the guy just based off verbiage and what the coaches have said, I think that the leash is short, and if he makes some mistakes, you're going to see Marcel Reed in the game awful quick compared to some other weeks. Got some players that need to play well for Texas A&M to win this game, and the most important to me is Tauren York. I'm going to tell you why coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. One player that I think Texas A&M needs to see play well against South Carolina is Tauren York. He's coming off a great week. Last week, he was the highest graded SEC linebacker with an 85.5 on PFF. You take that absolutely all game long. In that game, Tauren York, let's run through the numbers. He had 7 tackles. He had a tackle for loss. I mean, he was really, really solid in this game. And I mean, you obviously had the interception, did a lot well in this game. And Coach Elko said it. He said, listen, Tauren York, he hasn't quite put up the production that I think many would have expected. So, I mean, let's run through the season-long numbers. He's only got 17 he's got 47 total tackles, 17 solo tackles. He's got 1.5 sacks and an interception. I mean, I would say for the most part, he's on pace for the numbers to be similar to last year's. I think that the thought was, hey, he's going to take this huge leap. And it's not to say York hasn't been good. I'm not saying he hasn't been good. I'm just saying I was expecting a little bit more production at this point in the season. And Coach Elko said the same thing. I mean, he talked about that recently as well. Hopefully this is the game. You'd love to see York live in the backfield. You'd love to see York create a fumble. You'd love to see York create turnovers and slow the run game. There's a lot that he's going to do well. And then obviously you got to be able to stop Sellers and his legs and the talented rushing attack that this, between Old Rocket and Sellers that this South Carolina team has. You need to have your linebackers play well. You need to have your edge rushers play well. You got to keep contain on these guys. There's a lot that you need to do well in order to win this football game. And I think Tauren York is a guy that needs to play well. You would love to see him have another game where he grades out well on PFF, a lot of tackles, living in the backfield. You would love to see a performance like this from Tauren York. I mean, he's just a special, special player. He's an incredible leader on this football team. And that's one of the things I almost respect the most about him more than his play on the field is just how great of a leader he is. He's a great leader. He's so respected by his coaches and his team. And I mean, we talk about it, but I mean, to be a captain as a true sophomore says a lot about Tauren York as a person, something we've talked about this offseason. But I just have a ton of respect for him and the person he is and what it takes to earn that distinction and to earn that honor. So Tauren York is a guy that I think needs to play well in this game for the Aggies to win. The next name I have here is Trey Zune. And listen, once again, this I don't think is a crazy by any means take. And the reason I say that is because Trey, we've looked at South Carolina. They create a lot of turnovers and they get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They get a ton of sacks. You're going to need your tackles to play well, especially your left tackle. Trey Zune needs to have a good game. Whether it's Weigman, whether it's Reed, don't care whichever one of them is back there quarterbacking this football team. If they don't have any time to do anything, it's going to be really hard to win this game. So Trey Zune and the rest of this offensive line, I mean, it's not just Trey Zune. I could have said all of the offensive linemen. and the point would have stood. But at the end of the day, you need these guys to play well. You need these guys to show up, this offensive line as a whole, because this is going to be one of the better defenses you play all year long. And if your offensive line doesn't show up, you ain't winning this game. It's very simple. You need your offensive line to show up in this ball game. You also need your offensive line to show up so that he can help Daniels and Moss. You need your running backs to play well. That's always going to be a theme here. Knowing how much Coach Klein wants to run the football, likes to run the football, you need Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss to show up and play well in every single game if you want to have continue to have a successful season. These guys are really talented. We talked about it. I think Le'Veon Moss is one of the better running backs in the SEC. I think Amari Daniels is one of the better RB2s in the SEC. You have a talented 1-2 punch that against LSU, we saw some great games. Amari Daniels, 12 carries, 91 yards, 7.6 yards per tote. Le'Veon Moss, 14 carries, 83 yards, 5.9 yards per tote, and 2 touchdowns for him on the ground. The running backs have been the stars of this offense. It hasn't been the receivers. It hasn't been Conner Weigman. You obviously can make the argument that Marcel Reed was the star last week. But for the most part, when you talk about season long, Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels have been the stars of this offense. This rushing attack has been special. You need those guys to show up in this game. They need to continue to play well. Because what I've talked about, here's the deal. Colin Klein is going to run the football. He's going to run the football every game, whether it's working, whether it's not working. Colin Klein is going to be running the football. So my takeaway from that is very simple. If you're running the football, you need your coach, for the most part, to show up. And you need if your coach wants to run the football and he's going to do it regardless, you got to be successful doing it because he's going to do it either way. That's kind of my whole point. So I have been really impressed with these two running backs, and I've been impressed with the coaching staff putting them in positions to succeed. So I've been happy with that. But yeah, these two guys need to play well as they need to every game the rest of the season. The last name I have here is Noah Thomas, because here's the deal. Obviously, once again, they want to run the football. They're going to run the football. That's how they want to win this game. But on the flip side of that, you would love, Conner Weigman did not play well, and he could have helped himself out last week, but the receivers could have helped him out too. And I don't think the receivers were all that helpful to Conner Weigman last week. And yes, I just got done talking about how bad they want to run the football. The goal for this offense is to be a ground and pound team. There's no question. There's no debate to that. That is what they want to do. But at the same time, they want to be able to throw the ball if they need to. And at times last week, Thomas had the big catch from Marcel Reed, but aside from that, this passing game was non-existent. Obviously you had 134 yards, 54 of them came on one pass. So then besides that, it's a couple passes to Le'Veon Moss, a couple to Jabri Barber, a pass to Calhoun, a pass to Daniels. It wasn't this light up the world passing attack. And that's not what this offense wants to be known as. But at the same time, I think that you need to have it there if you want it. You'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So, yeah, I think Colin Klein wants receivers to be open and wants receivers to help out his quarterbacks. So I would love to see Noah Thomas have a good game here. And I'm not asking for 150 yards. I don't think this is going to be an offense where you have a wide receiver get even relatively near 1,000 yards. But you'd love them catch 2 or 3, 4 passes for 70 yards and just help and just be a little help for this offense. Don't let them sell out to the run. Make it harder on the defense by the threat, just the threat of the passing attack being there. So that is my thought on who needs to play well in this game. But how about this? Everybody needs to play well in this game. to get the win. That's the reality, but those are some positions and players in general that also really need to play well to get the dub. We're going to talk about why this bye week is coming at a good spot, coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. You know, talk about a 5 Hour Energy. I think that Marcel Reed coming in the game and scoring his first touchdown in a big moment for the Aggies last week, that was a fan fuel moment this week. It was really, really special when he did that and, found a way to help Texas A&M off the bench, come in cold and get the win. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. So, the bye week for this Texas A&M football team, obviously you got two now. You had one. When did the bye week come after? Now I forget. Oh, yeah, it was right after the Missouri game. I like this bye week coming here. I would have preferred if it came against the week after New Mexico State. I don't know the regulations on when bye weeks are allowed to occur, or is there a certain day it can't be one after, whatever, probably. But, it'd have been better if it came after New Mexico State, knowing that that's kind of it's a gimme game and you'd rather just play that game and then you have a week to get healthy before Auburn and Texas, that late push. But I still think this is coming at a good time because I think you've played a tough stretch. You've played a road since the bye week. You played a road game against Mississippi State and a home game against LSU. Two, physical SEC football teams, one on the road, one at home. Players retired. If you can get a big win over South Carolina on Saturday, then head into this bye week in a position where you go, hey, we beat New Mexico State as we should, and then we take care of business against Auburn. We're in the playoff. We're in the SEC championship, all that, whatever. That is a great feeling. So if you can win this game, now the bye week comes at a great time, win or loss, because if you lose, you say to yourself, okay, we have to go 3-0 to make this playoff. Let's do it. Let's go 3-0. Let's beat Texas, Auburn, and New Mexico State, and let's make the playoff. So, I think it's going to give you a good opportunity to get healthy and to rest. We talk about needing Basantis back. There's lots of players that, there's players that are out there. One thing you got to know about football, there's players that are out there playing right now that need a bye week because they're just a little banged up. That's just the reality. This happens all the time where we see players, they're out there, they're on the field, but they aren't feeling 100%. They're a little banged up. They're not 100%. That's just what happens. So everybody needs this bye week, not just the guys that aren't playing because of injury, even the guys that are playing, but they aren't playing at 100%. This bye week's coming at a really good time. It's going to be after 3 physical SEC games, 2 of them on the road, 1 of them at home against what was a top 10 team. Is LSU still top 10? I don't know. But that is why this bye week comes at a great time. It's going to give you an opportunity to get healthy ahead of that push against New Mexico State, Auburn, and Texas. So I couldn't be happier with when this bye week is coming. It's going to really help this team make that late season push to try and make the college football playoff and try and make the SEC championship game. It's coming at a good time, and I couldn't be happier with that. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. I just hit, I believe, here, let me tell you the exact number. Yeah, 2,300 subscribers. Really appreciate that. Keep hitting that subscribe button. Let's get to 2,400, and then let's get to 10K eventually. I appreciate your all support. Wouldn't be able to do this every day without y'all listening on a day-to-day basis. I really, really appreciate that. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to talk a little bit about keys to a victory over South Carolina. This game has quickly become a huge football game for the Aggies, for the Gamecocks, in the SEC as a whole. This is a huge game. We're going to talk on the show tomorrow about what it's going to take for Texas A&M to get this monumental road win over South Carolina and put themselves in prime position to make the playoff. And also probably do some mailbags. So if you want a question answered, leave it in the YouTube comments or send it to me on Twitter/X on my handle, which is right there. That didn't take that long. It's at Andrew Stefaniak for those listening on audio, Stefaniak. Hope everyone has a great rest of the Thursday. Have a great Halloween, and we will see y'all tomorrow right here on Locked On Aggies.